Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Folks at the 92nd Street Y. We are joined today with my good friend, Chris Cuomo. Many of you know Chris. Lots of fans out here, Chris.
I heard one.
Yeah, well, but we just started.
That's true.
He's the co-anchor of New Day every morning. In fact, he's normally asleep at this time, so this was quite a favor for us. He just came off of a one-month run of a new program called Primetime, in which he was doing both the morning New Day and Primetime. And we're going to talk about Primetime. We're going to find out what's happening with that, because it was phenomenally successful. Let's see, you know, he was once a correspondent at Fox News. He was the co-anchor at 2020. People don't remember this. I remember this. He was the law and justice correspondent at ABC News.
Tell them how we know each other.
And I'm going to get to that. I'm going to lead with something really cool. People don't realize how many Emmy Award nominations he's had. He's won a Polk Award, a Peabody Award, an Edward R. Murrow Award. He's a really highly decorated journalist. I, however, remember him as a law student at Fordham Law School many years ago. And then even after that, he and I used to work out together in the morning. And I'm probably the only person in this room, maybe, who knows he can actually dunk a basketball really well. Still?
No. Now I can. I'm lucky if I can dunk donuts and coffee.
He could really dunk a basketball. And maybe we'll get him to talk about this other little tidbit. There was a time when you were at Yale, I think, that you thought you wanted to be an actor.
Right.
That was something that was in your mind. So anyway, let's welcome Chris Cuomo. So, you come from this dynastic political family. We all know that your brother now is presently the governor of New York. Your father was a 3-term governor of New York. I'm proud to say that Governor Cuomo was on this stage many times, several times with me, and I'm very honored by that. One time he was hilarious. I know, is Matilda here? Is Mrs. Cuomo here? She was.
I didn't rate enough for Mom to come. If it were Andrew, maybe she would.
You know what? That's going to be on demand, and we're going to send her
It's
that.
only funny because it's true.
What about the other kids? Would she
Well,
have come for any of the others but Andrew?
oh, absolutely, because this is a completely non-secret with anybody who knows the family. But the women in the family are so much more successful, more beneficial to society, and more liked than Andrew and I. We just talk the most and have this need for attention. But my oldest sister, Margaret, is, I mean, you know all of them. Yeah. But she was not just a doctor. She was one of the first board-certified radiologists, women in the country. Yeah. She is now at the forefront of research on how food is so determinative of what happens to us in terms of cancer. She wrote a book about it. She speaks all over the country about it. Phenomenal intellect, never finished less than at the top of her class. And so she got Pop's gene. There, she got that one. Maria runs one of the country's largest homeless housing organizations.
Help.
On the side, right, Housing Enterprises for the Less Privileged, Help. On the side, she makes documentaries. Her last 2 documentaries have made it to the final round of consideration for Oscar nominations.
And she was a guest here.
Yes. And that's her hobby.
We showed Newtown.
Yes.
And we also showed The Invisible War.
Right.
Yeah.
And then Madeline, who has the best legal mind in the family, or at least that's what Pop would say. She was a lawyer for UNICEF. Right. She was a pioneer female attorney in the big Wall Street set 100 years ago. And she was fundamental to my father as a sounding board and to Andrew now. She was somebody where if you want to hear the truth about whether or not what you're saying makes sense and works,
call her.
That's who you ask. So they are all phenomenally more useful to society than we are.
And Madeline's husband was my former teaching assistant.
Brian O'Donoghue. My mother's favorite male in the family is an Irish guy named Brian O'Donoghue.
Former fireman.
Yeah, and again, only funny because it's true.
All right, we're just gonna be on demand, and I'm gonna send her this so she can watch you.
Yes, well, you better tell her it's something about her and about mentoring, or she won't watch it. My mother runs a big national mentoring program. It is the focus of her existence, especially now that Pop is gone. And let me just say quickly, I am well aware of my father's legacy in this place, and it is a very big part. I don't do a lot of this. I have very little interest in what I have to say about anything. And that was something that was shared by my father. He had very little interest in what I had to say about anything as well. But it was important to him that the 92nd Streetwise mandate be met, and that, as they say on the brochure, in a world that often seems shallow, you should be ready to go deeper. And he believed in that. He loved this place. He loved the conversations. He loved you guys. He loved this audience of thinkers and people who would come at him. He really did. And you should feel good about it, because it wasn't easy to earn his regard. So that's a big reason that I'm here tonight. I'm aware of the legacy. I'm happy to continue it.
Let me tell you a Matilda and Mario line that came on this stage. Your dad, one time, and I had him on the stage, was just absolutely hilarious. He was always charming, but this time he was really funny. Every line they just ate him up.
Was there water in his too, or were you giving him a little?
I was giving a little something.
Did you juice him a little something?
I juiced him a little.
Because he could not hold his booze. You put a little something in this, you get all kinds of
Well, you set him up that night where you told that joke about how he couldn't, and if there's any, it was a joke about sex, that if sex is ever mentioned, right, this was a guy that if sex was ever mentioned, he's out of the room.
That's out. He's gone. You couldn't even touch your spouse.
Yeah, right. He was the Mike Spence of the Democratic Party.
No. Pence, and no, he
Right,
wasn't.
Pence. So he told the story, said that your mom refused to marry. He was at the time a semi-professional, he was a professional baseball player.
Yes.
And he had dreams of becoming the next Joe DiMaggio.
Yes.
Another great Italian-American. And your mother, Matilda, set him on another path. She said, I'm not marrying a baseball player. I want to marry a lawyer. And
Who told you that?
He told the audience.
That's not what happened.
That's what he told this room.
I know, of course that's what he told the audience. It's good for him. That's not what happened.
All right, what happened?
He got hit in the head with a ball. This is true. He got hit in they didn't wear batting helmets back when he was playing. Pop got beamed, was in the hospital. My mother didn't hear from him. She interpreted it as he was, out on the reservation running around. Send him a telegram saying, I'm not interested.
So this was on the road?
Yeah, lose my number. Right. And he went right back to Brooklyn and got married.
He thought he lost her.
And he used his signing bonus. Pop got a bigger signing bonus than Mickey Mantle did the year after he was drafted. He used to call it one of the worst investments in baseball history. But he went back and he married my mother. So that's why. And I don't think she said yes at first either, but then she obviously did.
Yeah, but there was some truth that she wanted.
There's a little bit of truth. It's like everything else today.
She did
want a little bit of truth.
She preferred the lawyer to the baseball player.
She did not want to marry some guy who was running around in South Georgia, is what it was.
I understand.
And she was right. And she wound up putting him on this path. My mother and one of my father's very good friends named Vincent Albanese, who's still with us and doing well, he convinced my father to get involved with public service. So I always tell people when they're Cuomo haters, I say, blame him, don't blame me.
So there was a time you thought you might be an actor. You gave that up. You graduated at Fordham University at the law school when I was there. Yeah. And then you went and worked for a very short time at a law firm. And then you gravitated immediately to broadcast journalism in the earlier days of these incarnations of some of these networks, because you were on CNBC, you did filed reports. I remember we would leave the gym in the morning and you'd say, don't forget to watch tonight, right? And it's true, because I didn't really know, I was vaguely aware of these networks like MSNBC, which became huge, but Chris was really one of those early pioneers on those shows. You were taking batting practice on those shows. So did you at some point make the decision, well, you can talk about acting as well, but public life was not for you? You didn't want to do what your dad did and what obviously Andrew wanted to do?
Yeah, I've never had, look, so many of the decisions you make are a function of your own personal experience, right? So I understand the value in public service. I don't like that people are kind of defaulting to this idea that everybody involved in public service is somehow bad or on the take. It's not true. And it's like so much of the talk today in politics, it's more convenient than it is compelling if you look at the truth of it. But when you grow up in politics, it is hard to see that as a path that you want to take. So to watch my father and the agonizing and the losing and the not being able to provide for his family the way he would have liked and my mother would have liked, and the compromises and the money, and Pop was so against the money in politics. The worst thing you could do with him was donate to him. If you gave money to his campaign, it guaranteed he'd never talk to you again because he was so appalled by the nature of the need. So that was my experience. And, I didn't see what made it worth it. Now, Andrew then had a very different conclusion and does not like when I say this, and we've had a lot of conversations about this, and he is also right. I believe in my brother. He's a hero of mine. I never had to go outside my own family for male role models. But I don't see the virtue of the trade-off the way he does. Andrew is willing to take the beating and not make money or lead a more pleasurable life and spend more time with his kids because he believes in the mission. He believes it's all worth it.
Now, do you think that's because he actually was your father's campain manager? I mean,
in part.
He lived it in a way
you could argue that would give him more reason not to think that because he was actually making the sausage. But he believes it. It's really in his head and in his heart. And people make a mistake about Andrew when they look at him and just see him as a brilliant tactician and a great worker of the systems of government. You're missing a romantic. And he's not a romantic like my pop was, and it's not a fair comparison. My father came up with such an intrinsic sense of being a warrior. He was so disadvantaged. People were so against him and telling him he was less than his entire life. That was just who he was. That's why he went into public service. So Andrew didn't have that background, but it doesn't mean that he doesn't have in his heart what Pop did, because he very much did. And so much of my father, going in 1984 and doing that speech that wound up meaning so much to so many people.
We showed a portion of it here when he was here.
He wouldn't have done that if Andrew didn't push him to do it. Pop
Really?
didn't want to give the speech. He didn't think he deserved the platform. He didn't think he had a message that would resonate. He didn't think it was worth it. People would think that who does he think he is? He just got in and now he's giving this keynote speech. Who is he to give it? Andrew, as much as anybody, if not more, told him that he was worth it, that it mattered, that if he wanted to fight the good fight, this is what he would do. That's who Big Brother is. Very often I don't agree with his politics on things and his methodology, but that's part of being brothers and part of being a clear-eyed thinker. But that's one of the misunderstandings people have about him. They see the brilliance as a tactician, and they assume, therefore, that there's some kind of impersonal nature to that. There's an antiseptic nature to that. There's a harshness to that. Those are true as attributes, but not in terms of the true story of who he is. And I have no reason to lie about my brother because I have no interest in seeing him be in office. I would love for my brother to decide this has been enough. I want to go do something. I want to build houses. I want to build marinas. I want to do something else. I would love that. I'd love to see him escape the scrutiny, which is way too often unfair. I'd love that. So I'm not putting a sell on you for Andrew. I'd love for him to find another way to meet his own passions, but I don't see it happening.
Now, the performative actor, Chris Cuomo, have you reconciled that in the career that you then ultimately chose? Is it satisfying, whatever it was at Yale that made you think you'd be on the stage? Does this have a piece to it every morning on national television?
I don't know. That's a good question, Thane. I think that I believe I hate shtick. I can sense theatricality and see when somebody is projecting something that's not authentic very easily. And I think most of you can, right? I mean, I think that's one of the things that bleeds through. A television camera is a weird thing. I always feel that it actually captures more about what's inside somebody than what you're actually experiencing on the outside. You get a feel, especially if it's done right. That's why we always move in close on people. You get to read somebody's face. It often is more impressionable than the words coming out of it. I think that's equally true about live television because it's so hard to keep up a gimmick with that much time, that many hours, people staring at you. There's very little relief from looking at the people on the screen. So I do not see myself that way. I give very, very little thought. We've talked about this before. I don't think about how I'm going to come across, probably to my disadvantage sometimes, frankly. I get myself into some situations I probably could avoid. But it's just not why I do the job. I don't care enough about the popularity that would fuel more intensity and thought about my presentation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Speaking of presentation, I have two offshoots of this question. Just, can you tell us a little about the primetime experience? It was phenomenally successful. I think you enjoyed it. This room seems to have enjoyed it.
One person. And now all of this just makes it worse.
So, but it must have been backbreaking. I mean, normally you'd be asleep at this time. Instead, you were on television.
I did that job in my sleep. That's how easy it was.
Well, because normally you would be sleeping at that.
Yeah, I'll tell you two funny things. Here's the first funny thing. What I have on right now, with this edition of a black tie that I bought, I wore every night of that show for an entire month. And 3 people noticed. And I did it for 2 reasons. 1, I dig the look. And 2, it's obviously, what's to like about it? I look like a mortician. But the second reason was I wanted to show how little that matters. Look, first of all, there's much more attention to what women wear and fashion and all that stuff with them than there is with men. That's true. But even if you want to take that as granted, it just doesn't matter. We put too much emphasis on the wrong things in these struggles for meaning that we're having right now. And that's part of it. I wore the same thing for a whole month. Nobody cared. It doesn't matter what I wear. It's about what you're saying, why you're saying it, how you're saying it. So that was the challenge for me to go at night. The boss asked me to do it. I serve at the pleasure of the boss. And he said, I want to try something out at night. And there are reasons for that. I mean, he would have to offer them. My understanding of it was nighttime on cable is a crucible. It is like Thunderdome. Did you guys see the Mad Max movies?
Sure.
Thunderdome.
This is an intelligent audience.
Well, then maybe you wouldn't have seen it. But this is the kind of stuff I watch, by the way. I'll help you understand why I am the way I am. Thunderdome, 2 men enter, 1 man leaves. One day you're the cock of the walk, the next day you're a feather duster. That is very much this existence. It's very existential. It's very combative.
And not true in the morning.
The morning is different. I mean, it's bled through a little bit, but people are just waking up. You can't be that hostile that early. Then you got a real problem if you wake up that way. So you have to be mindful of that. Where you're meeting people as an audience. Where are they? What are they doing? What's going on when they're watching you? And then you have to start considering first screen, second screen, third screen. Are they watching you on their computer? Are they watching you on their TV at home? Are they watching you on their phone? How do they digest this information? How should you give it to them? Those are all things we're thinking about much more in cable than they do in network, where I've also been, obviously. So the challenge of Thunderdome I am drawn to. I believe in fighting the good fight. I think that what is going on, and we can talk more about this right now. And I know it may not even be popular with this audience necessarily, but I think you have to make a decision about whether or not you want to prove that you're right or whether you want to get something done. You are not going to be able to achieve both. It's not going to happen. The polarization that's going on is deep and real. And I don't mean that in this area code. I am all over this country all the time. And very rarely with a camera on live television. It's usually just deep immersion documentary work, or I'm there for coverage of a very bad situation where you get to see, real, raw reality. The division is real. It always has been in this country, but it is different now. And this need to be right, and whether it's, dealing with a lot of the softballs that the president is giving the left right now and how they deal with when he does something that was poorly thought out or is wrong or is dangerous. How you deal with it winds up becoming as important as what has been served up to you in the first place. And the right has its own problems with that. So you have these silos, this echo chamber where people are seeking comfort of confirmation. That's not who we are. It's not who you should want to be. That's why I did it at night. I said it at the end. I got like all these people. I love when both sides attack me. I get a kick out of that. I like to see myself as that aisle, like that's here between these two groups. I like that. One, I don't know why. I think it's something that's wrong with me on some kind of deep personal level. But I also think it's being raised at Cuomo. You know, it's like being raised by wolves. You know, if you're not in some kind of confrontation, you're not happy. You know what I mean? It's like, this is all too easy. Everybody's so happy. Here, you know. So the idea of, I like what this man is saying. I like what this woman is saying. It makes me feel good. They're giving me more ammunition for where I am right now. That's fine. But you will never get anywhere that way. You will never get anywhere on gun control if you continue to define it as, I want gun control, or you're a Second Amendment person. As long as you stay in those silos, there will be nothing of any value that comes out of the process. It can't. You have to give. You have to pick what matters to you and figure out accommodations on policy. It's just how it is. That's why we are where we are with this. I've been to more of these school shootings than anybody in this room, I guarantee it. And I do not like that distinction. I do not like going there. I do not like looking at these families in the face and know that I can offer them no solace. And I cannot give them any confidence or hope in the proposition that, well, at least it won't happen again. At least somebody else's baby, somebody else's spouse, somebody else's friend won't have to do this again. And they all look at you in the eyes and want that relief. And I can't give it. And there's something very soul-sucking about that. But I had pretty clear eyes on this, Thane. I knew that, look, I have a lot of respect for Rachel Maddow. She is really smart. And that's not a given in television. She is really smart. She's really thoughtful. She's really cogent. No question about that. But she is talking to a group of people who agree with what she says every night, okay? She is. I'm not criticizing it. That's not my game. I don't need to drag other people down and lift myself up. I'll leave that to the politicians. Sean Hannity, I'm sure not that popular guy in this room. I've known him a long time. He's been really good to me on a personal level. I know him much better personally than I do Rachel Maddow. He is preaching to the converted. No, he ain't Rachel Maddow. I would never want to see him go at it with her in a Trivial Pursuit contest or any kind. I wouldn't even want to see him play her in Clue. I think he'd have his hands full. But he is preaching to a group of people who believe in what he's saying. But where does that leave you? So my feeling was, look, let me get involved in this mess because I don't really give a damn about being popular. I know that there are two sides, but see, here's what we're missing. I know this. This happens to be true. It may resonate, it may not. It may wind up being dispositive in terms of who people watch on TV, and it may not. I don't know, but I know it's true. And we were talking about this before, so forgive me, Thane. But if you ask people in this country, how do you identify yourself, Democrat, Republican, or independent? The independents outnumber the other two. All right? That's who this country is. There are tons of independent thinkers who are being drowned out of this shouting match that we're having. So the metaphor used to be, well, this is a fight we're watching, the left and the right. And nobody watches a fight for the referee, which is who CNN was. I don't agree with the metaphor anymore. I see it more as Game of Thrones, where you have these two big kingdoms that are going at it, but there are other kingdoms that are there that if you took them in total, they are actually more populous and frankly more powerful than the two main kingdoms. So I wanted to do that to reach out to the independent thinkers and to the independent voters. And even though I know that this is somehow not seen or as journalism or as even abusive of it, I do this job for a couple of very simple reasons. I believe in trying to make a positive difference. If I didn't think I was making a positive difference, I wouldn't do the job. I don't care about the popularity. I could make my money doing something else, thanks to the education you helped give me.
Thank you very much. There we go.
The second thing is that I test power. I believe in that commodity. I don't want to just talk to the camera and tell you what I think and try to convince you. That's a skill set. That's valuable. It's not what I do. I want to sit people down in that chair and say, well, go ahead, make the case. And I'm right here. And as you said earlier, I'm studied up as hell. I prepare like crazy, maniacally.
I said that
I'm listening.
I said there's an audience out there, actually it's this audience, that is concerned about the dumbing down of our culture and the dumbing down of our news. And I
hope that's true, but I don't know. I hear it all the time. And look, I want to believe that. I'm just saying it's not reflected in the numbers. You see what I'm saying? That I hear people say it all the time, and I want you to be right. And I am no cynic, okay? I'm a skeptic. I'm not a cynic. I am unrealistically optimistic about things. I believe it's the only way to live. Helps me get up early. But I don't believe it because the numbers show otherwise. The numbers show that you don't want clear-eyed thinking on this. You don't want to have what you believe tested and make you uncomfortable. You don't want to have to understand the practicality of making an accommodation to the other side to get something done in the name of progress. You don't want it. You tell your lawmakers that you don't want it with every vote you do to keep the same people in there that you know that aren't giving you the process and the progress that you want. You see it in the TV ratings because you have Hannity and Maddow splitting the pie, and Anderson Cooper is as smart, as driven, as worldly as any journalist you could ever want in your life. But that's not what you want because he's not feeding the beast. He's not telling you what you already believe. He's not giving you what you want. So the numbers bear it out. And that bothers me.
But your show was successful.
It was successful incrementally. I ain't no Anderson Cooper. He's got some head of hair, that guy, by the way. Thane's always had a great head of hair. I'd never met a law professor like that before. I was like, wow, that's a nice head of hair on him. But Coop's got a good head of hair, and I don't know how he's kept it because he has seen more misery in this world than anybody else I've ever been with. He goes and he sticks. But what I felt was, look, I really think I'd like to make this case. And that's why I'll do it, because otherwise I'm just asking for a beating. I'm already in a knife fight in the morning, ratings-wise. I wasn't looking for more marginal success, you know. But I felt that it's worth the effort because I just don't see where this gets us. I just don't see where it gets us.
Do you think we'll see more of you in that way, in that role?
I serve at the pleasure of the boss. Would I do it? You know, maybe when I was doing it, I would have told you no, because I was coming from a place of fear, as my therapist would tell me. But, and I don't think you can come from a place of fear about this. I do the job because I think I can make a positive difference. I think that by testing power, you give people a better sense of assessment of who's out there and what it is. And I think that by massaging issues to look for, all right, let's just do an example. I hate hypotheticals. The tariffs, okay? Trump says, I'm going to drop these tariffs on people, and does it kind of hastily, and all right, so you can criticize the process. Do his people know that this was coming? Of course, it was a signature promise. Did they know he was going to do it this way? Yes, no. This guy Navarro kind of got into the mix. He hadn't been in the mix for different reasons. So all right. Then he says, we're going to have a trade war. Trade war is a good thing. It's a preposterous thing to say. It's not only demonstrably false, but it is inflammatory in a way that just speaks like somebody who you turn your head away from at the bar at 1:30 in the morning, not a guy who is in charge of this of the free world. You know, it's supposed to be a different damn standard. And we have forgotten that. Why? Out of political convenience and expedience and him feeding instincts that are very real in this country, and we're looking for some resonance. And I think the book that needs to be written about Trump is The Luckiest Man in the History of Politics, because I have never seen anybody connect with a group of people that they share nothing with on any of the metrics that should matter, except that he says, I'm just as pissed off as you are. I like that this world, make America great again. What does that mean? That means taking it back to a place before all of these different wars that have been fought culturally, supposedly for good reason. That's what it means. That's why it resonated. That's why it worked then. Why at the Gridiron dinner the other night did the president end by saying, we have a great country, we can make it even greater? Why? Because now he's starting to think about it a little bit differently. He's not just trying to stoke those fires of discontent about people who want it to stop, who don't want another letter added to LGBTQ. They don't want any more letters. No more letters. Too many letters. Too different for me. This is what God intended. This is what he intended. You know, why wouldn't you have a leader who would just say, you don't like gay men? No, I don't like. Good. Don't marry a gay person. Next issue, let's go. You know, why? Because you play to the fear. You play to the anger. As long as you do that, you're going to have a problem. Trump makes it easy for his critics. There's no question. I think there's good reason for that and bad reason for that. But I think at the end of the day, we have to start looking at it differently than we're doing it right now. We're not going to get anything done, Thane. You got the tax policy done, but what was any Republican would have gotten that done? You know, he made that even harder than it should have been, really, right? I mean, that's the last time I saw Paul Ryan speaking. You know, really, you know what I mean? The guy's like hiding half the time because he knows he doesn't agree with so much that comes out of the president's mouth, but he can't say it. Why? Because he's choosing party. He's choosing party. When it was Obama, he was all about the people. I must say that this is the truth, that he cannot speak like this as President of the United States. We must be better than that. Where's that now? Where's that now? We know where it is. It's in his pocket, because he's choosing to take out of the other pocket the expediency of party. We've seen Democrats do the same thing, but this is the state of play right now. But where are those independents? Who's speaking to them? They're going to make the differences in these elections. There's a simple formula in politics: a third, a third, a third. A third are for Thane because they identify with him. A third are against Thane because they don't identify with him. You're fighting for that middle third. That middle third are the independent thinkers. And I don't see how they fit into this silo system. So that would be my opportunity if there is one.
So let's go back to something you said a moment ago. You know, you have been very well traveled as a journalist. School shootings, Virginia Tech, you were there. The Amish school shooting in Pennsylvania. Bridge collapsing in Minnesota, the mine collapsing in West Virginia. You know, you haven't been...
Make it sound like I caused these things.
No, but you... I think it says something about that you haven't been chained to an anchor chair.
Right.
You've been around America. And we're here on the Upper East Side of New York at a 92nd Street Y audience. And, you know, we do live in a blue state bubble to some extent. Mm-hmm. And when people say that the Trump victory was an absolute aberration, once in a lifetime election, and a complete out-of-the-box experience, maybe they're wrong. I mean, maybe this is America. When you're talking about who's representing themselves as independents, that there is a kind of, I wouldn't say focused anger, but that he did tap into something.
Yeah, he did.
That was very profound, and yes, very lucky, but maybe he kept saying all along, you know, I could go on Fifth Avenue and shoot someone.
Yes.
My people will still support me.
Right.
I remember when you interviewed him when he was a candidate during the primary season, and you had a contentious interview with him, and he wouldn't stop insulting a CNN reporter, and then he was insulting other people, and then you said, you know, Mr. Trump, you know, you can't just win an election by insulting people. You know, if you were the president, you know, at some point, you'd be on the world stage, and you're not. You can't do that.
Shows what I know.
Yeah, and he ended up disproving the most obvious statement.
He insulted his way all the way to the big chair.
And you said on television, you can't do that on the world stage.
Yeah,
and
that's
now
why I'm
we're
sitting
saying,
on cable TV, and he's got the nuclear football.
And he still says, shithole countries. So maybe there is something here about that. If you're living in New York, we're not really fully recognizing. There are people who have observed that it wasn't Hillary Clinton's campaign.
Right.
It wasn't necessarily the deleted emails. It was a cultural elitism. You said LGBT bathrooms, perhaps. What we see on college campus speech codes.
Right.
Intersectionality on.
There's a lot of stuff. Look, I think it was a mandate election. I don't mean that in the traditional sense of him having won with such a number that obviously everybody's in favor of his agenda. We all know that's not true. And I think that that's the big asterisk on the win, right, is that he lost, which is, you know, he lost the popular vote. Does that matter? Of course it matters, because it means he doesn't have that kind of mandate. It is about polarization. It was just about a handful of votes in several states. And there are lots of reasons that go to organization and also Clinton as a candidate and other things. But a little bit of that, all of that is a little bit of a distraction from what is going to matter to your premise, which is accurate, which is all of this real? Yes, you do not have to leave New York to see it, by the way. I don't like the bubble thing. One, I like my bubble. I would rather be with this audience, and I think that you have open minds here. You have deep thinkers. You have well-educated people. You have people who come from very diverse backgrounds and a lot of struggle. You do not have to go outside New York State to see struggle. You don't have to go outside New York to see Trump voters. You know, they're going to lose this state because there's too many of you guys in a couple of the big cities. But there are plenty of Trump people. Where I live out in Suffolk County, they're full of Trump people. You know, my in-laws are here tonight. You know, the people that we're with out there, I mean, they're Trump voters. They believe in it. And they don't believe in it because they hate gays. They believe in it because they're small business people. and they think that they've been forgotten. They believe it because they're cultural conservatives and they believe that their society is getting away from them. And then you have this third group, which also feels that, but they feel it for bad reason. This then and now thing is a problem for this country. This is definitional. The gun issue is definitional. That's rural, urban, yeah, but it's also how it was versus how you say you want it to be. This is a country that was forged from violence. We are a violent people. I am a violent person. I spend a lot of my time fighting. I fight on TV. I do mixed martial arts. I fight. I played rugby. I ran into things at high speed. So, and I was celebrated for it. There's a hardness here as well as a softness, what Pop used to call sweet strength. So don't be fooled. There are different facets to it.
And you don't have to go to a red state.
You do not have to go to a red state to see any of the things that matter there. I mean, obviously, there are going to be distinctions wherever you go. That's not what it was about. What it was about is things swing with, in the pendulum of politics. It goes back and forth, and we're seeing that right now. We're in a swing. What takes it the other way? I don't know. That I don't know. That is a task for independents and Democrats who don't want the Republicans in power. You're going to figure it out. I don't think that you'll get the same dynamic twice of the exigency of being against the way Trump was. Fundamentally, Trump was against things. He said, make America great, but even that was a backhanded proposition, right? It was assuming that the country's not great. So he was against. It was an anti-election.
And the Democrats can't win by doing that.
I don't think so. Maybe, again, I'm wrong. I was so wrong with Trump. I didn't even focus on that part of it because I could never get over him telling me that he thinks he's under audit because of his strong Christian faith.
Right. You couldn't get past
I'm like
that.
almost never thrown. We grew up in the same place, the Trumps and the Cuomos. He was in Jamaica Estates, we were in Hollis. So I kind of feel like I get where he's coming from most of the time with what he says. I didn't see that coming at all. Maybe I get audited all the time because of my deep Christian faith. And I said, what? Yeah, you think that's why you get audited? He goes, well, I don't know why else I'd be audited all the time. And I said, I don't even know if you are audited all the time. We've never seen any proof of it. It's just, anyway, the point becomes that you have to see it for what it is and don't judge it. A mistake that we see people making too often with the president, he makes the joke about President Xi from China, basically making it so that he's president for life. He makes a joke about it. He gets savaged by the left. He doesn't respect the presidency. He doesn't respect democracy. See, you went too far. Now when you do that, even if you were right about all those things, you still go too far. Well, how? How can both be true? Here's how. Because you are in the battle to prove that you are right about him. You are not in the battle to figure out how to create progress with him there. He is not going anywhere. These hopes that people are pinning on this Mueller investigation, I have a far, far better legal mind than I could ever imagine to be sitting next to me. You should prepare yourselves for disappointment if you think that this man is going to indict a sitting president of the United States. I don't understand that reaction. It has never happened for a reason. They don't even know constitutionally if you can do it. There's this real abstruse theory of law about how he would have immunity as president, you would have to remove him through impeachment, and then you could expose him to whatever. It's not going to happen. And the impeachment thing is not going to happen. You don't have the votes. It is a political process. It's about the votes. High crimes and misdemeanors means neither high crimes nor misdemeanors. It is an illusory standard that Madison made up with Jerry and a couple of other guys where they modeled it on British common law. And first they had a bar that was too low, and they're like, we'll be impeaching people every day. We can't have. They said, well, let's create a higher standard. And they started listing off these different crimes, and they realized they had too many crimes. They're like, there's a lot of crimes. Like one of us does this every other week. We're all going to be impeached. So they came up with high crimes and misdemeanors. It's a political thing. You know how it works in the House and then in the Senate. That's what saved Bill Clinton was, a couple of votes in the Senate. So I just think that you have to think about the progress. You got to figure out what happened with Russia and who helped them. Absolutely. By all indications, Mueller's doing that job times 5. See where it comes out, fine. But don't make it existential. Don't make it that this is going to be your moment in the sun if you're against Trump. I think you're going to be disappointed and you're not going to have any progress.
I'm thinking of your dad at this moment because
He would have agreed with me, by the way.
Yes, I think he would have, in part because, remember, we've talked about this. His thinking about he wasn't a liberal, he was a progressive pragmatist.
Yes.
And so therefore, for him, he would frame the debate and this discussion in the same way. He's in office, how we're going to work with him and stop dealing.
I don't mean accommodate him.
Right.
I don't mean excuse what he says. I don't mean not hold him to account. I'm saying something different. I'm saying pick an issue, gun control. All right, he's nowhere on gun control. In truth, this is atypical Trump, right? He went both ways on it, a little bit like the DACA thing. There's something in him that tells him instinctively, this is a little wrong what's happened to these DACA people. This is a little wrong that we keep having all these mass shootings more than anywhere else in the world of developed countries that supposedly have crime under control. But something, let's say, like the tariffs. You beat him up all you want over trade policy. And the Republicans, conservative thinkers, are against him. If you just attack what he says, you will not make any progress with him on trade. He will double down, he will dig in, his base will stay with him, and the Democrats will ultimately wilt because they don't have the numbers. So you will be nowhere. On infrastructure, you will be in exactly that place. On tax policy, you were in that place. The Democrats lost. They lost. They didn't manage it right, and they lost, and they should have because of the numbers. But then they had the shutdown. That was a moment, okay? They could have rooted in and said, here are our principles. And I'm not saying I want to see the government shut down, but I'm saying it happened, right? So you might as well make it happen for a reason. They didn't. They didn't go to Trump and say, this is going to stay this way until you do this one. One of the things that was suggested at the time that I thought was a good idea. Go to Trump and say, tell the corporations that they have to use a percentage of the money that you're giving them back on labor. Just a slice. We'll define the slice, but you tell them you got to use their money that way a little bit. They wound up doing that anyway. Corporations are very smart. They want to show that this was a good move, giving them this money back. We're giving out those $1,000 checks. They were cut like the next day. Why? Because they're smart. And it was good for them to do it. And it was to show this was a good use of capital that they had. It was right. This was good policy. The Democrats could have done that. They didn't. Why? Because they were too dug in on being right and showing that he's wrong. And I'm just telling you, that's not a remedy for progress.
I want to talk a little about fake news.
I was doing too well. You wanted to come at me with the
Yeah, no, I want to come back with
fake news. It takes the steam out of me.
Yeah, no, because it's not your fake news. There is, I'm for one, feel that we've been too casual about this term of art and how destructive this is to American democracy. We now know, fake news, what it is I don't like what you're saying about my guy.
Yes.
It's very unflattering and it upsets me very, very much.
Yes.
And so my response to it is, what you're saying is fake. And the next step, and I'm speaking now as a human rights law professor, as a child of Holocaust survivors who's written books about the post-Holocaust world, the next step from fake news is fake history, right? We used to say, Holocaust denial. Well, that was considered a joke. It's not a joke if you're saying that version of the event of history is not the one. It upsets me. I don't like it. In fact,
guy running for the state house in Illinois right now says it's fake.
And in Poland, they just passed, many of you may be aware of the Polish Holocaust law. By the way, I don't think there's been that much coverage on CNN, but it's unfortunate because it connects to some ways where we're at here culturally, ideologically. We just don't like that version of the story. If you go to Poland now and you go walk around Poland and start talking about the Poles being complicit in the Holocaust, it's a jail sentence or a fine. So I'm wondering whether CNN is as worried about this as I'm worried. Walter Cronkite in his day was considered the most trusted man in America. I invite you to come to the 92nd Street Y, and I'm getting Twitter messages and Facebook messages about, well, he's there to support fake news.
Right, and that's just from my family. Look, we deal with it. We deal with it all the time.
Do you actually talk about it?
We talk about it a lot. Now, one of the frustrations is there's not much you can do about it other than call it out for what it is and just keep pounding away at what is fact and what is feeling. And both are okay, but each has its place. The reason that it is a problem is that we are a little fragile right now. And
we as a country?
Yes, I am never fragile. I am twisted steel. But as a people, we are fragile. And democracy is a difficult thing. And there's a lot of tolerance that goes along with democracy. And it's not always easy. And it is hard to come back from some of these things quickly. So God forbid something happens where the president needs the country to believe them about something they don't want to believe. Like if you take us back to like a yellow cake day or something like that as a signature to why we're going to go and destroy another country. I don't know that he gets people on his side. I don't know that he gets his own party on his side. And he may know things, that he may be right, and the people may be telling him things, the intelligence community, the generals, depending on the context of the situation, where he needs to be a moral agent for this country. And what he doesn't seem to understand is that you don't call some things fake, but somehow preserve the legitimacy of other things. When nothing is true, then nothing is true. And that is a dangerous place when you're dealing with subjective realities. And that's where he is taking us. And there are others helping along for their own advantage when it happens. But it's not easy to recover from quickly. So I think he learned that a little bit because he's been getting pummeled for lying and being wrong and deceptively wrong. By the way, that's why I don't use the word lie all the time. People throw the word lie around all the time. I do not. Why? My definition is this.
By the way, this happened this morning.
Yes. Well, no, he was being a punk, that guy on the show. So this morning, because I know all of you were watching, right? So this guy was on, and he didn't like that I was saying it is difficult on the facts to believe that no one in the White House, including General Kelly, knew about these allegations against Rob Porter, the guy with the 2 wives, the police report, the black eye. It is a gossipy business, okay? That's what they do down there, is like figure things out about one another for good and bad reason. The idea that a guy beats up 2 of his wives and nobody's ever heard of it is hard to believe. The idea that you haven't heard it when the FBI knew about it and told the general counsel, the White House counsel, is really hard to believe. So I say exactly that. He says, well, I don't think you should call General Kelly a liar. See, now that's a tactic. And that is a fairly impressive.
And you said, I didn't.
I didn't. Well, but I mean, I didn't. But I mean, I got what he was trying to do. He was trying to push me back. But that just like makes me more aggressive, in those kinds of situations. Because here's the definition of a lie to me. 1, you're saying something that's not true. 2, you know it's not true. 3, you are trying to deceive me with what you know not to be true. And you could add as a 4th, and I have a right not to be lied to in the situation. And I added that one for my parenting, because sometimes with the kids, they don't check that 4th box about whether or not they deserve to know the truth about that situation. So that's how I get to maintain certain fictions and other standards of behavior in my house. But the first 3 certainly matter objectively. Do I know that Kelly knows that this was true and is deceiving me with it? No, I don't know that. I don't know that. He may have known the information and not believed it, may have known the information and not valued it. He may have known the information and thought it was being processed and accounted for and it was okay. And do I believe in the difference between a white lie and a big lie? I do. I do in that business. Why? Because that is a business about persuasion, politics. And I don't think it's done on a 100% truth basis all the time. I don't think people want to be told the truth 100% of the time because sometimes it's aspirational, right? Sometimes it's inspirational. Sometimes you have to tell things that are possible, even if the facts show, well, maybe it's not probable. But I'm going to tell you that it is. Why? Because we'll never get there otherwise. So you got to make some you got to make some accommodations. But that's one of the things that we're dealing with now. You're fake, you're real. Here's the problem with it. When I ask somebody a question or I go at them about their case, the comeback now is too often, you're fake, you're bad, you're against me. That's just dangerous to the democracy. The president, I believe, correct me if you think I'm wrong about this, but I think he was trying to get some momentum going for a return of the alien and the sedition laws that we had in like 1798. You were aware of this? Wound up making John Adams a one-term president. John Adams, great man, great thinker, such a big proponent of the First Amendment. But then what happened? He got power. Then he got power, he became president. And all of a sudden, everybody saying whatever they want to say is not such a great proposition for him, right? So he allowed, right, I won't say he spearheaded, but he allowed, to our best reading and understanding, his party to put in these BS alien and sedition laws that made it, listen how bad this was. Why do I laugh? Because why would I cry all the time? You know what I mean? That's the only alternative. It's so hurtful to what I know to be right and what we're supposed to be about. I was raised by people who were so thankful just to be here because of the opportunity, who made every one of us realize that our responsibility to everybody else is so much greater than to ourselves. And now I'm dealing with this shit every day. So anyway, so the Alien Sedition laws were, don't say anything bad about me or you're going to jail. And they had these carve-outs that you can't say it about the president, you can't say it about the Congress, but they carved out the vice president, who was Thomas Jefferson, who was from the other party. And they put a limitation on the statute that it would expire when the Adams party went out of power. So the law would become null and void when it was their turn to criticize who was in power. I mean, the audacity of the BS was really impressive to me at that time.
And you think Trump was heading in this direction?
There's no question that he wants it to be illegal to criticize him.
Yeah.
There is no question in my mind that if you gave him that power, he would take it and use it. That's who he is. When he said the S-hole countries, why don't I say the word? Because I'm tired of saying it. I said it like 100 times. Everybody knows what the word is. I got kids too who watch my show. Like, I'm the problem with your kids watching television. Right? I'm the one. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I repeated what the most powerful man in the world said 10 times. But why did he say? I said, this is who he is.
Yeah.
Why? Because this is what he showed us. Maya Angelou's advice to Oprah was spot on. Someone shows you who they are, believe them. He doesn't care about coarseness if it plays to his advantage. This is a fact, okay? This is not about my opinion of him. I do not hate the President of the United States. I do not have a personal animus against Donald Trump. That's silly. It's a distraction. But the truth is, he's okay with these tactics. He thinks they work for him. This is another reason why we must abandon these efforts at this zero-sum polarity game. It won't get us where we need to be. Because here's what happens in zero-sum. Inertia happens. Where do we see the inertia? Congress. We see inertia. Well, we have to see what the president's going to want. Since when? Since when do legislators wait for the executive to tell them what to legislate? This isn't the budget. This isn't a proposal. These are laws. This is about guns. This is about culture. This is about safety. Why are you waiting? Because inertia is what you get in a zero-sum game. Paul Ryan, by all accounts, is a good, decent, hard-working family man. Why the hell is he so quiet? Because it's inertia. It will stay like this. You will have another shutdown. You will have another debt ceiling. You will have all of these things happen because of inertia. You have to find a way to get out of the silos in the name of progress. You have to, because it will only get worse. These midterms, these victories that the Democrats believe are coming their way. Why? What is the reason to believe in you that you're going to give voters in these midterm elections? Not the reasons to dislike Trump and the Republicans. Why am I going to leave my house? Why am I going to get help from my kids and I'm going to come vote? Because I hate Trump? Some people. Because I hate what's going on? Some people. People vote for things, not against things. I know we just saw something different in this election, but you got to distinguish between what Trump was selling and what people were buying. Their disaffection is real. Their disenfranchisement is real. Their fears about the culture are real. They wanted somebody who gives them comfort about celebrating Christmas. I don't believe there is a war on Christmas. I celebrate Christmas. I understand why they think it. I get it. I get what secularization of a society means to certain people. I just don't get why it's new when the country was founded that way. Yes, they said, "In God we trust." They were all Christians. Of course they were going to say it, but they were so dogged in their efforts to make sure that there was no recognition of institutionalized religion. But those are all real things that they're feeling. It's real. And a lot of them are right here in this state, people who feel that. I'm not making the money I should. The rich and poor gap is getting ridiculous in their estimation. respect it. Don't dismiss it. Don't say those people are stupid. Don't make effigies. Respect it. Figure out how to pitch to it. Be better than that. The Republicans have the same challenge. I just think that that's the only way that this goes forward. It's not necessarily bad for business. This is good for business, for my business. The Trump circus is great for business. People watch. They say, stop talking about Trump. Don't put that Kellyanne Conway in one more time. You watch her more than anyone else that comes on CNN's air. People stop me in the street. You seem like a nice man. Why do you talk to that woman that way? I won't watch. When she said to you that she... Wait, hold on a second. You won't watch? Or you're just going to quote something that was said in the interview with me right now? Which is it? So, be mindful of these things. There are a lot of influencers in this audience. There are a lot of independent thinkers in this audience. Don't be forced to pick a side. The truth is a side too, The truth is a side too. You don't have to just have selective truth. You just don't have to believe things that accommodate a certain agenda. The truth is a side too. It's just like this aisle up the middle of the room right now.
Let me ask you a question that a Trump supporter might ask a CNN person. He might say, or she might say, look, Fox News during the Obama administration was like the opposition party.
Yep.
One could argue that that's now true of MSNBC, the opposition party.
Yep.
They might say, I still think CNN is slanted and biased against my guy.
Okay.
If he stopped tweeting, if there was slightly less chaos, if there was less insult, would you give my guy a fair shake? Would you acknowledge some of his achievements? Because all we hear about is the Mueller investigation, which you just said we don't think is going to lead to an impeachment. We don't really...
That's also not the standard of efficacy.
I understand, but I'm just saying from a news gathering, you're saying, look, this is good for numbers, it's good for business. But there are people who say, well, he decertified the Iran deal, he's taken a tougher line with North Korea and Syria, and people were very critical of Obama because he didn't.
Right. He didn't really decertify the Iran deal. It's
Right,
still in operation.
It's still in operation. The Republican tax
Your
bill...
knowledge of the facts, the Trump voter is not very strong right now.
Right. The Republican tax deal plan has advantages that people could acknowledge just on what Apple is going to do alone.
Right.
There's low inflation. There's a soaring stock market.
Yes.
There's, I think, 800,000 people were employed last year, within that last year. Growth is 3.3% at a high level.
What are you asking me?
I
want to know. Say in this conversation.
No, I want to know. I'm giving you the Trump line, saying here are things we're not hearing. Would you give my guy credit? Is it really just his boorish behavior that's causing this, or can we just get to look at what he's actually trying to achieve?
Okay.
An agenda.
All right. Good. Here's what I would say. One, they're not mutually exclusive. Okay. The job of president is not just about what kind of legislation you promulgate. There's a moral authority there. You could argue it is the most robust of the authority that we need from that kind of leader. So I hope he never stops tweeting. Never. I know you guys don't like it, but I love it because I don't like how it messes up my show all the time. Like, we've done all this planning of these conversations we want to have, and then he tweets about something. It's like...
But you do have to make decisions on the fly.
Yeah, but here's the thing. The idea of ignoring, like Allison and I, my co-anchor, she's had to come around this way of thinking. She was like, I think he's shining waving the shiny object and we're running off that way. I have spent too many years of my life being nice to too many people that I don't really like just to get a fraction of the insight of what's in the mind of a president that I get every day.
From the tweets.
From Trump. I want to know where his head is. I cannot believe that he exposes himself this way because he creates his own problems. But God bless. That's what he wants to do. That's fine. I like the tweets. His legislative agenda and wins. All right, now all of them there's going to be some testing there about what's good, what's bad, what's right, that's wrong. Has he done things? Absolutely. Regulation rollback? Absolutely. What is their impact? Now that is not as clear as the listing. And my early point would be, a lot about those things because I told you, by the way. These things that he's done, I cover it 24/7.
Right, you haven't ignored it.
Right. If he did not make it so easy to criticize him all the time, he would not get criticism. And the idea that I'm not giving him a fair shake, you cannot find me. You can't find me an ombudsman. You can't find me a local legislator. You can't find me anybody, anywhere, ever in the history of politics who's been more forgiven for things that they've said than this man has. Ever. Ever. It's not even a contest. Any one of like 20 things that I could repeat right now with a quick Google search of things he said would have got disqualified.
During the campaign.
Or now, and then, ever. They would have never survived. So the idea that it's unfair to him is ridiculous to me. However, in respect of the position, the answer becomes both. It's not mutually exclusive. You must be held to a standard of decency and respect for people, for institutions, and for principles that are central to our culture and our democracy. That's your job. If you don't want to do it, do something else. If you don't want to get criticized, put on earmuffs. That's the job, okay? It's not going to stop. It shouldn't stop. It should be fair, and it should be done with an eye toward an ultimate goal of progress. Now, I get why to journalists, and maybe, I don't know. I just feel like I don't care. I'm going to say it anyway, because I can get where journalists would say, well, I'm not an advocate. I'm not here for progress. I'm here to tell you what is. I don't buy it. I don't think that's the point of journalism. Even if you take Bernstein's definition of trying to get the closest approximation of the truth, well, why? Why do I want to give you the truth? It's in the name of progress. It's not in any particular agenda of progress, but that's how we get better. The more information you have, the more you know, the more informed you are about your decisions, the better you can vote and put the right people in there. Why do we want you to put the right people in there? Because we want them to do things that are good for you. Well, what is that called? It's called progress. So that should be the goal. You got to criticize what he says when he deserves it. You shouldn't do it to the exclusion of praise when it is warranted. He creates a lot of his own problems. The legislative agenda is not clear-cut. He cannot get credit for everything that's happened in the last 10 years of this economy in 16 months. He is getting more and more credit for it as it is good on his watch. That also is a fair appraisal metric. But you can't ignore that he causes his own troubles. You can't kick a puppy and get pissed off when people say stop kicking puppies. Don't kick the puppy, and you won't have the same problem. Don't tweet obnoxious things. Don't demoralize people. Don't take people who've been elected leaders and try to trivialize their position and disrespect them.
And you would be surprised if he changed.
Why would he change? It works.
Let's take some questions from the audience. I think the future of news, I guess this person wants to know, where do you think the future of news will come from? And this person has a smiley face next to Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and wants to know, how can a reporter even compete with Twitter?
More is not the same as better. Does that make sense? More is good. I'm a fan of more in a lot of ways, but it is not necessarily better, okay? CNN is not the same as a blog that is written by some man or woman where the link looks just like CNN. And then you read it, and it is this half-baked opinion that is really just seeking to destroy some position that they don't like. More is not better. The opportunity, I think, is greater for the cream to rise to the top. There's just more outlets for it. There's more reach. I don't think it has changed the game of, is this true, is it relevant, is it rational, is it resonant? And I only pick those words because they all have R in it. I think that the idea of doing the job doesn't change. You just have more outlets for it, and it's a little bit harder now to discern what is true and what isn't. There are some new outlets that have been helpful for it, BuzzFeed and stuff, but those guys also get caught every once in a while, which, by the way, is part of the practice. This idea that the standard is perfection is silly. You're going to be wrong. Most of reporting, it's not like we're reporting on what's 2 + 2. You're getting things from people that sometimes are wrong. Sometimes they're lying to you. So what do? You try and get 2 sources. All right, so that's why Bernstein said get closer to the truth. That's frustrating to people. What do you mean? It's either true or it isn't. Please, what are you, 7? there's often subtlety to things. There's often context and nuance to things. That's one of the things politicians exploit, right? Is that they exploit those soft spaces on what's true and what's not true. So I like Twitter. I think the tone on there is no good. The anonymity of it bothers me. I'd like Twitter more if I have to know who you are. Show me your face. Show me your name. And then say that to me, and I will hunt you down. No, I'm kidding. But I think that the anonymity is a little bit of
this is the mixed martial arts.
Yeah, that's right. I'll give you the. I don't even know what that is, but it looks like it's menacing. This is even more menacing because it's more fingers. I'd like people to see you a little bit more real, because it would take away all these Fugazi accounts and the bots and all that stuff that you have. It'd be harder to do that. I like social media. I think it's great for people to have a platform for expression, but I think the standards stay in place, and that allows opportunity for the people who do it well.
What responsibility, and this I'm sure many people share this question because it's got that frustration about journalism being he said, she said. What responsibility do journalists have to acknowledge when there aren't two sides to a story?
Yeah.
Or when the two sides aren't equal? For example, not giving a platform to birthers, or an equal platform to climate scientists versus climate deniers.
The false equivalency thing. I'm with you. You're right. You're right. Having two sides doesn't mean that the two sides are equal. It's true.
It also speaks to this relativizing of truth that the fake news people are saying, you have a truth, I have a truth.
That's right. That's right. All right. So why isn't it as simple as that? Never have them on. Well, who's them, first of all, right? Because that gets a little squishy. And then it gets, well, John was the author of the Marketplace of Ideas, right? Which was one of the early aspirations for the First Amendment. I believe you err on the side of having more voices. Now, I didn't interview the Holocaust denier jerk who's running for office in Illinois. And that's what you deny the Holocaust, you're a jerk, all right? There's no facts, there's no science, there's no data, it's a bad position. It's a hateful position. It's not a real position. I wouldn't interview him. Yes, he was on my show, but I wouldn't interview him. Why? I don't think he deserves it. I'm not talking to Nazis. I'm not talking to Nazis on the show. Why? Because I don't respect their position. I don't think it deserves respect. Well, that's subjective. You just said the John ideas. I know, but you have to make some choices. I err on the side of inclusion, unless you're just breeding hate, because I'm going to test it. That's my job. I want to have you on, and I'm going to test you, and I'm going to expose what is weak in that argument. That's how I fulfill my responsibility, not by censoring, not by just putting the people on who you already agree with and like to hear. You're going to hear those other ideas if I'm in the chair, but I'm going to test them. And then the measure of your frustration should be a coefficient of how well I do that job.
Last question.
Is that satisfying? All right.
This person says, I watch New Day all the time, I guess in the mornings though. I think you ask the tough, piercing questions we need nowadays. So I'm a huge fan, but my question is, do you ask your guest questions with a fully open mind, or do you have some perceived bias before you ask? And the reason I chose this question
is because you wrote it.
No. He knows me. No, I didn't. It's because I know that one of the reasons you wanted to do primetime was because you wanted to have face-to-face encounters with people and open conversations with people.
Right. So the question is, do you have biases?
When you're talking to somebody, do you know where you're taking them? Do you know where you want to end up with them?
No. I do a lot of listening. I believe in a lot of active listening. I don't believe in having a question sheet. I think it's a mistake because then you can't listen as well, and you start getting caught up with these ideas about where you want to go and what's next, and you start looking for opportunities and moments to inject what you wanted to put in instead of listening to what's there. But that's not really the point of the question. The point of the question is, do I have biases? Yes, of course I do. I'm a human being. Everything is functionally subjective. The idea that the goal is objectivity, I think that sounds good, but I think the real goal is fairness. You know, you go and you march with the KKK. How do I feel about you? I don't like you. You're lucky we're meeting on camera. But I'm still going to talk to you. I'm still going to give you the respect of let's hear what you have to say about why you were there with these people, and then we're going to go at it. Why? Because I have certain feelings about those things. I'm a human being. I don't leave that at the door. I think that's an impractical and impossible standard, objectivity. Because it says, well, you have to be impartial. No, you have to be fair. You have to be fair. You have to know, because if you don't know things, that's how you get caught in these BS 50-50 propositions. You know, I put on 2 guests because I don't know enough to know what the real reckoning and the real leavening of this issue is.
And you would be prepared to stop one, to challenge them if they were simply wrong.
And that's the job. But do I have my own feelings about things? Yes, I have feelings about everything. But I will tell you this. I really don't have a lot of interest in my own opinions about things. I really don't. I cannot tell you how often people are dead wrong about where I am on an issue and why I'm going after somebody as hard as I can. I'm not kidding you. It actually bothers me. It really does. It makes me feel like, because I give the audience so much credit. There's so many people in my business that think that, you know, you guys are a bunch of mouth breathers. You know what I mean? And it's like, you know, they don't know what they're talking about. You know, you got to dumb it down. I feel so opposite that. That it fuels so much of what I do. So
why do you feel bad that, because you're not feel as strongly about?
I feel badly that how could you think that? How could you think that just because I'm going after this man or woman about this thing, it's because that I actually favor this other policy? Why would I do that to you? Why would I do this? Why would I put myself through this crazy existence that we live in this, with the hours and the exposure to the negativity and the stuff that just scrambles your brain? You know, when you go to one of these places, all these young journalists, if any of your kids or grandkids or significant people in your lives want to be journalists, and they'll say, you know, I want to go and cover war, you know. Listen, you are never the same after these experiences. You have weird personal deficits. You have weird imbalances of how you see things.
Didn't an IED blow up when you were in Afghanistan?
Yes, thank you for reminding me of that, Thane. It's great. It's
I think
5 years of therapy.
I want people to know that he's been on the front line.
I've been in a lot of these things. I've been lucky to come home from them. But what I'm saying is, you're never the same. So the idea of doing that gratuitously is just insane to me. Do I have feelings about things? 100%. I have feelings. They're why I do the job. They are why I do the job. I don't know why I would do this business otherwise. I would never cover entertainment. I would never cover sports. Why? People say to me every once in a while. They say 2 things that really piss me off. One is, you know, you should do sports. I love sports. And I guess sports is a game, man. You know, that's how I got into college. But you know, it's a game. I don't care about that. I care about what matters to us, to our kids, to what's going on. The other thing they say, you know, you should run for office. I'm equally insulted by the sports thing, because
no one is worse than the other.
I'm like, aren't you hearing what I'm trying to do here? I'm trying to tell you and help you deal with that system. I don't want to be part of that system. I want to stay outside the system. I want to attack that system for its weaknesses, and I want to glorify its strengths when appropriate. But that's why I do the job, and it makes it harder. I wish very often I could do this job the way it was done a generation ago, where there was much more of an antiseptic, straight, this is what I can show you, this is what it is, you know, have a good night and good luck, and all of those other cliches. That's not why I do the job. It's not how I do the job. And I will never do the job that way, because to me, you are here to try to make the world a better place. You're trying to make a positive difference on things. I'm not here to be popular, but I am here to seek out those independent thinkers who make a difference in these elections, and they make a difference in the world around us, because not everybody's in these silos. And that's what drives it. And sometimes it's going to create trouble for you. There's an easier way to do the job than I do it. I know that. But that's not who I am.
Christopher, I don't want to get weepy here, but you know, I had a lot of affection for your dad. And he would have been so incredibly proud of you. The quality of his fine mind, his passion, his romanticism about the energy of life is something that you so well and so finely inherited, your eloquence. We are so fortunate to have you in this political moment, in this time, telling us the news, telling us the analysis of our day. Christopher Cuomo. We'll see you again.